Breitbart News Saturday with Matt Boyle on Sirius XM Patriot 125.
And again, folks, Breitbart News Saturday here on Sirius XM 125, the Patriot Channel. I'm Matt Boyle, our Washington Bureau Chief. We're broadcasting live today from St. Augustine, Florida. The number here, 866-95-PATRIOT, 866-957-2874, Sirius XM 125, the Patriot Channel. We'll get back to caller lines in just a few minutes, but we're joined on the line right now by another very special guest, the U.S. Senator from South Carolina, Senator Lindsey Graham. Senator Graham, I really want to thank you for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday.
Yeah, good morning.
So lots to talk about here, but you were very fired up after this blown-up meeting in the Oval Office yesterday between President Trump and President Zelensky. We were just talking to the National Security Advisor, Mike Waltz, about this at the top of the show. Tell us your thoughts, big, broad picture here on what happened, then we'll get into some of the specifics.
I think we need a big, broad picture view. Well, what happened is that I met with Zelensky earlier in the day, about 10 o'clock in the morning, with a bunch of senators, and we said, this minerals deal is a game changer. It's $500 billion for the United States. It will create a business relationship between the United States and Ukraine we've never had. Once we start doing business, Russia's far less likely to invade. And President Trump can say, I got our money back, and I created a relationship where we'll actually benefit from Ukraine. It won't be a drain. Mike Waltz, myself, Scott, the vice president was fantastic. I've been working on this for even before the election. But President Trump realized that this was a good deal for America. I talked to him the night before. He was excited about it. And Zelensky, for the last couple of meetings, has been very edgy. The guy has been under siege for 3 years. He's been fighting to save his country. I get all that. But I told him, do not go in and talk about security guarantees. Let's focus on the mineral deal and try to, move to the next level. And JD responded to a question from a Polish reporter that was very, I think, derogatory toward President Trump. He didn't say a word to Zelensky, and he gave a great answer. Then Zelensky felt like he needed to jump in and tell JD the history of the war. I've been to Ukraine 9 times. I don't need to be told the history of the war. I know how hard they fought. But here's the big picture. Can you do business with Zelensky? Is he a reliable partner? The Ukrainian people have the best army on the continent of Europe. They have trillions of dollars worth of rare earth minerals. They fight like tigers. I've got a lot of admiration. But can Zelensky get to yes? Can he find a way to end this war? Here's the world in which we live in. I was in Munich a couple of weeks ago. The Europeans get up and make wonderful speeches about democracy. They call, Putin a war criminal and a thug. Then they go out and have a glass of wine. Here's what Trump is doing. He's trying to find a way to end this war. Good for Ukraine. He's not trying to humiliate Putin. He has a different style. How well did 4 years of Biden work in terms of making the world a safe place to live? Biden's team were absolutely losers in the eyes of all the bad guys. The Europeans are piling on in support of Zelensky. Here's my message to the Europeans. Maybe it's time for you to defend your continent. Maybe it's time for you to stop hollowing out your military. And if you want to use tough rhetoric toward Putin, how about back it up with some muscle? When a European leader speaks, no bad guy listens. When Trump speaks, everybody's on edge. I was never more proud of President Trump than I was yesterday. He stood up for America. He refused to be lectured to. And at the end of the day, whether or not Zelensky can change, I don't know. But I'm proud of the president, I'm proud of the vice president, and we'll see what happens.
So, Senator, a lot of reasonable minds can and have disagreed about the U.S. handling of Ukraine over the course of this war. What level of aid should we provide aid, et cetera. But the one thing that happened in this moment, and I've heard from a number of people, obviously you were out there very fired up about this. I've heard from a number of others who were offended that these are people that supported giving U.S. aid to Ukraine over the course of the last 3 years, they were offended at the way that President Zelensky handled himself in this in these interactions with President Trump and Vice President Vance. Are they right to be offended? Tell us about that.
Do you think I was offended?
I think so.
Well, name somebody who's been more supportive of trying to make sure Putin doesn't roll through Ukraine. It's not an indifferent event to me. Defunding the police was a stupid idea. When you let people start robbing and stealing from stores downtown, people eventually close up. If you let people out for crimes under $1,000, they'll figure out how to steal $999. In 1994, Ukraine gave up 1,700 nuclear weapons to Russia with the promise that Britain, France, and the United States would help them maintain their sovereignty. In the deal of 94, Crimea and the Donbass were in Ukraine's camp. Putin's trying to take things by force. That's not good. There goes Taiwan if we let people get away with this. So the big picture has been very clear to me. Biden was a disaster on many fronts. I begged him to tell Putin what happens if he invades by pre-invasion sanctions. Put sanctions out there so he'll know what will happen to him. We don't want to be provocative. I begged him to give them tanks. We don't want to be provocative. Give them fighter jets. Give them long-range artillery. They did the least amount possible to drag this war out. Now comes Donald J. Trump. He sees value in Ukraine. He believes that this minerals deal is a great deal for America, and he will defend his business deal. He is not out to humiliate Putin. He's not out to please a bunch of hand-wringing Europeans by the way he talks. He's out to end a war that should have been ended a long time ago, in a way not to start a new war. So, yeah, I was very supportive of trying to make sure Putin didn't get away with stealing stuff that he doesn't own and raping and murdering Ukraine. However, having said all that, President Trump reset not only Ukraine, but is that a guy you want to trifle with if you're the Chinese? Is that a guy you want to screw around with if you're the Iranians? I've never been more proud of him. He turned everything Biden did in 4 years upside down in a 20-minute meeting. He's a reasonable man. He called me last night. He was excited about the deal. He invited me to come to put me on the front row. J.D. Vance helped get this deal. When the president said he thinks this is a good deal, J.D. went in and rode very hardly for the team. And, Zelensky got edgier and edgier over the last couple of weeks. The idea of ending this war, I don't think he knows how to do it. When Trump says something he doesn't like, that's not the point. Trump is trying to save your friggin' country. He's trying to give you a second lease on life. He's trying to save Ukrainians from, bitter and horrible deaths. Donald Trump is your friend in Ukraine, and he was not treated respectfully. So a lot of people like me who have been wanting to make sure Putin doesn't get away with this were offended. And so to the Europeans, if you think you can do a better job in talking, it's yours. If you think you do a better job in helping Ukraine, go for it.
So, Senator, one of the big things that you said after this whole thing outside the White House yesterday, I saw this clip. It was going viral everywhere. You said that, after this happened, maybe Zelensky needs to resign. You said that if not, they need to send somebody over. He either needs to change or they need to change the leadership and who's coming over to negotiate with the U.S. So can you tell us about your thoughts on that? Where do you stand on that now? Explain that.
Nothing's changed. So listen, President Trump called me last night. We talked for a long night before last, and he said, "Come here. You worked hard on this thing." He was really upbeat about it. He and Zelensky have had their differences, but that's Trump. If you understand anything about Trump, he's going to pound you until he can get the best deal he can, and it's no more than that. So, my thoughts are, people who sort of hate the war and hate Zelensky is not my audience, because I just disagree with him. I respect your opinion. I just disagree with you. People like me who believe that one thing does affect the other, that if you, give Ukraine to Putin, there goes Taiwan, and Iran's probably going to break out to nuke because America's weak. Here's what I would say to that crowd, to my crowd. I don't know if Zelensky is capable of doing a deal. He's got such a chip on his shoulder. He wants to lecture everybody all the time. He said, he asked JD, have you ever been to Ukraine? Well, I've been there 9 friggin' times. And yeah, I was offended. So I don't know if he's capable of doing a deal. I don't know if he has the mindset to realize all wars end and it's a give and take process. I don't know. If he doesn't change or somebody new doesn't come, this deal will fall apart forever.
Mm-hmm. So, Senator, the really, really big picture beyond the borders of Ukraine here is that, and I talked to Secretary of State Rubio about this earlier in the week. We did a big interview at the State Department on Monday evening. Is that the United States recognizes that it would be not in the best interest of the United States, or frankly, in the best interest of the Russians, for the Russians to become a junior partner to the Chinese, right? Like you mentioned China a minute ago, and they're watching this stuff.
That's why this deal
right?
was so friggin' smart.
Mm-hmm. Right. So, Senator, can you explain that for us about because it really does feel like, I mean, look, nobody likes the Russians, right? Like nobody's defending them. They're
I got
great,
it.
Great guys.
Calling Putin a thug and a killer, okay, that's great. Do you feel better? Probably. Have you done anything to stop him? Have you done anything to make the world safer? The Europeans love to give speeches to each other and go and have a glass of wine.
Right. But the big picture here, again, is that the Chinese Communist Party is the bigger threat to the world. I mean, by far, right?
They have the capability to do things that Russia can't even dream of. They have the Russia is a weak power. They are a gasoline station parading as a country. Putin is 70-something years old. He's got this delusion of grandeur. China is the threat that has the capability and the will to change the world for the worst. The biggest threat's Iran with a nuclear weapon because they're homicidal maniacs and they'll use it. But the geopolitical threat that we face the most is China.
Right. And so the big picture, again, here, it does seem to be that the Trump administration, from President Trump to Vice President Vance to Secretary Rubio, everybody on down, recognizes that. And they are trying to realign things here that, maybe there are some things we can agree with the Russians on and work with them on different things. And that was one of the things that Secretary Rubio said. And we don't want them just falling in line with China 100% of the time.
I think so. I don't care if we do a minerals agreement with Russia, if it's good for the United States. If they have a business relationship with the United States, they're less likely to put it at risk by invading Ukraine again. So if we could have a business relationship with Russia, Putin's a thug, a murderer, you say all that, so was Stalin. Sometimes you just have to deal with people that you don't like because it's in your best interest. I think the best thing can happen is to end this war in a fashion to deter future invasions, but also to establish a relationship with Russia that would give us some leverage that we don't have against China. I think that all makes sense to me. Going to Asia, pivoting Asia, count me in. But you can't go to Asia having lost in Europe and lost in the Mideast. If we let Iran get a nuclear weapon, that's a nightmare for the Israelis. We got to end this war to deter further aggression by Putin, which will help us with China. But I'm not at all adverse to trying to engage Putin in a way that's good for us, even though I don't like him. That's just the world in which we live in. Donald Trump is the best hope for Ukraine, to keep them armed, to have a business relationship he would defend, to make sure they're sovereign, independent, and democratic. If you don't get that in Ukraine, you missed a lot, as do Putin. The goal is to end this war, end the killing, and maybe have a relationship with Putin no one could envision just a few years ago.
Mm-hmm. And Senator, the last thing I would ask you here about is that you sent out a big post on X this morning on Twitter, or formerly Twitter, now known as X, saying to the hand-wringing Europeans who felt offended by President Trump rejecting being lectured by President Zelensky, be my guest to defend Ukraine from Putin. It is long past time for Europeans to show they are capable of defending their own continent. They've allowed their militaries to be hollowed out when Europe speaks. No bad guy listens. I say this with great sadness. The last group of people I would count on to defend freedom are the Europeans. This seems to be one of the things that President Trump is trying to do here. We saw the meetings earlier in the week with Starmer from the United Kingdom. We saw the meeting with Macron from France. Right, and by the way, both of those guys are people that have fundamental disagreements with President Trump, just like it appears to President Zelensky does. They handled themselves much more professionally, I think, than
100%.
President Zelensky.
Now,
But the fact
in
is
fairness
that
to Zelensky, good.
yeah. I was just going to say
No,
the fact is that maybe those countries, maybe the UK and the French and the Germans and these other folks should send troops over to Ukraine, not the United States.
well, we're not sending troops to Ukraine. I'm a pretty
Yeah.
hawkish guy. There's never going to be one American boot on the ground, period. Okay? Let the British, the French, and the Germans police the. What did we get wrong in 2014? Obama and Biden are a nightmare. Their foreign policy led to invasion after invasion, Hamas attacking Israel, you know, Putin invading twice. So I don't want any lectures from a bunch of Democrats about how to defend freedom. You were lousy at it. So what's happened here is let's end this war in a way we don't have a third war. Let's make sure we have business interest in Ukraine that most Americans would want to protect. Let's find a way to have a ceasefire that leads to a permanent peace. Find a way to negotiate this thing and have security agreements with the Europeans backed up by the Americans so there's no third invasion. That helps you with China. All of that was very much on track. But Zelensky has been hailed as the new Messiah by the European leaders. The European press applauds him every time he has a dust up with Trump. Do I like everything President Trump says about Russia? No. But I know Trump. I trust President Trump to get a good deal for America and not to sell out Ukraine. He has his own way of doing business. To all the Democrats who are just so upset this morning, and to all the European leaders who are so offended, see what you got. You had 4 years, and you did nothing but sit around giving good speeches and watch Ukraine get raped and murdered. Okay, so show us what you got.
Senator Lindsey Graham from the great state of South Carolina, sir, really want to thank you for joining us here on Breitbart News Saturday. Where can people go to learn more about you, follow along if they so choose?
Just about everywhere on the internet. I got a website, lindseygraham.com. Go visit. Just finally, there's a new sheriff in town. President Trump and I have become friends. We don't always agree. I'll tell him when I think he's wrong. He'll tell me when he thinks I'm wrong. I respect him. I admire him. It takes a strong person to make peace. The Biden years were a gift for the bad guys, and there's a new sheriff in town, and yesterday you saw a new America.
Really exciting stuff. Thank you, Senator, for joining us. We'll
Thank
get
you,
you back again real soon.